Everyone talks about Carg Island. Whether or not that actually needs to be seized is another matter, but it's certainly a target. And there are other islands inside the strait itself and not far from Bandar Abbas, right offshore, that theoretically have Iranian IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps elements, small boats and so forth that can exert some influence. But everybody forgets a couple of things. First of all, what really closed the Strait of Hormuz was not Iran itself, but Lloyd's of London. Suddenly, none of the ships could get insurance. And if you can't get insurance, you're not going to take a tanker worth hundreds of millions of dollars through the Straits of Hormuz. So that was number one. Once it became clear that you couldn't get insurance, then the Iranians were in a position to say, well, if you're not supporting the war against us, you're not allied with Israel or the United States in some way, and your destination is China or India, now increasingly Japan, then we'll be happy to let you through, provided, of course, that you've paid for the oil in yuan. This is an effort to get at the petrodollar. So I think what we've got now are two levels of warfare. On the one side, there is economic warfare that we're losing because the entire world is suffering as a consequence of this war in the Persian Gulf. And then secondly, we have the Iranians who are exercising a new form of warfare. It's the 21st century answer to the American World War II paradigm. Our World War II paradigm is on display. You see it with aircraft carriers and destroyers offshore, submarines, and then at the same time, numerous aircraft flying from various airstrips ashore and even back in the United States and Diego Garcia. That has been our instrument of war. It hasn't worked out as well as we'd hoped because the new way of war is essentially almost limitless quantities of precision-guided missiles and unmanned systems that can be launched from anywhere inside the border against targets out to almost 1,000 miles from Iran. And this has been very effective. It's driven our fleet way offshore. It's forced us to bring in hundreds of aircraft that have to be refueled on a routine basis over Iraq or Saudi Arabia or other areas. So it's a different kind of warfare, but it's turning out to be very successful. Iran doesn't need an air force, doesn't need a navy. It has an army and it has lots of missiles and drones. And these things are prepared for use almost immediately from various underground enclosures. So that has to be defeated from the standpoint of President Trump, because if you can't defeat that and you try to put ground troops on these islands, we have about 10,000 light infantry right now for that purpose. They're at high risk of being killed once they come ashore. In fact, Iran still has pretty capable air defenses for everything under 15,000 feet of altitude, which means that if you try to fly them in with V-22s and helicopters, they're going to very much be at risk. So I don't know how this is going to work, but I think this is designed to be the war-ending offensive. It is sort of the last throw of the dice, if you will, for President Trump. What else is really happening in the world? Well, the strait is functionally closed to anybody that supports us in Israel against Iran. But we've already had a tremendous disruption in the supply chain for oil and petroleum and liquefied natural gas. So the world is facing a crisis of food, fuel, fertilizer, and feed. Think about that. The whole world is struggling with this right now. In 2 weeks, Great Britain will no longer have any oil reserves, none. India is in trouble. India now has hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people lining up to buy gas. It can't keep up with the demand. It's shutting down industries. Plastic industries in particular that depend upon petroleum are shutting down. You have a similar situation in Japan. Now, China is actually prepared for this disaster. They have a much larger strategic fuel reserve that has more months in it. But the bottom line is the whole world looks at this as a catastrophe for themselves, for their security, for their businesses. And I think the Iranians know that. And I think the Iranians have planned on tremendous pressure being exerted by the rest of the world on us to stop the war. And I think that's beginning to build. And I think it's going to be very powerful in the weeks ahead. We haven't talked about what's happening here and the impact of inflation, the fragility of our financial system. And the question is coming up more and more, how do you pay for all of this? It's no longer a $1 trillion defense budget. It's now a $1.5 trillion defense budget to pay for everything you can conceive of. And how are we going to do it? And people are asking that question. And Besant says, oh, it's a ridiculous question. What, we just print money? We just buy up our own debt because nobody will come in and buy it? We're headed to a catastrophe financially and economically as well. It's just going to take longer to happen here than it's happening today in Europe. We're not really interested in negotiating with Iran. We want to destroy Iran. That has always really been the goal. Whatever is left over, we plan to divide up. We and the Israelis plan to control the oil, obviously, and the gas, and whatever else is there. But this is effectively another version of the strategy that we embraced against Russia that has ultimately failed in the Ukraine war. Ukraine has lost 1.5 to 1.8 million men fighting. The Russians are in control of the critical terrain that they went in to liberate to begin with. They don't really want this war to go on. They'd like to bring it to an end, but no one has been willing to cooperate with them. But this is not costing them anything. And as we all know, they're doing a land office business in oil right now because they're supplying oil to everybody that can possibly afford to buy it. And they're doing it at very, very lucrative prices. So
Right.
you can say we've done wonders for Russia, and whatever sanctions we've imposed have turned out to be completely irrelevant. The point is, though, now we have, 10,000 light infantrymen, and we're trying to figure out what we can do with this. It's going to make any difference to who controls the Straits of Hormuz. I think that's a very tall order. I think it's going to be very difficult and extremely dangerous. We have to understand the two ways of war. What the Iranians are doing is that they have built enormous quantities of standoff attack weapons, primarily ballistic missiles and unmanned systems. We call them drones, in huge quantities, most of them underground. They can be launched at will. And we keep saying, well, we've eliminated all their launchers. Well, I have a lot of difficulty understanding that. I don't think we've eliminated all their launchers. I think there are more launchers out there than we care to admit. I don't know how many decoys we've struck. We hit a lot of decoys in Kosovo back in 1999. I think we're hitting lots of decoys inside Iran. But the point is, they built all these systems. They have what we call persistent surveillance. Sometimes people call it a surveillance stare, as in staring at something, at all sorts of levels. Now, if they come down to lower levels, like the MQ-9, the Israeli Hermes, the Iranians have been shooting those things down. So how are you going to guarantee that they could even get in? And how do you protect them once they are in? And how do you get them out? This is another exercise in, we're going to be successful, so don't worry about that. What if you're not successful? How do you extract your troops? How do you evacuate the wounded? How do you keep these people alive? Where do they get water? And remember, Iran has already said if we're going to destroy their power plants, they're going to destroy everything in the Gulf. And 90% of the electric plants, in other words, the power plants in the Persian Gulf on the eastern or the west side, are all along the coast. They're all identified. They're easily struck and put out of business. What about the desalinization plants? We hit those, they're going to hit them. And the people in the Arabian Peninsula are then in very serious trouble, not just our troops. In other words, I don't think this is a good idea, but we're back to the war-ending offensive. Develop a war-ending offensive for me so I can walk out of the Oval Office and say, victory at last, the Iranians are surrendering. Good luck.